Hey students, I'm glad you're here for the Friday recap. For those of you that don't know, for the last several weeks, 15 weeks or so, we've been going through the Bible as a church, and our student group is following along with that. And we felt it was best that we would start doing this kind of highlight video on Friday, recap video, where we just talk about what we've read so far this week. Because each day we're reading about 2 chapters of the Bible, and this just kind of gives us a chance to just collect our thoughts, see what we've looked at so far, maybe if there's a day or two that you missed, to kind of get caught up. And, also give you, if you haven't been reading along with us, this is a good way for you to jump in. You'll kind of have a little bit of bearings on where we're at, what we've read recently, and you can jump in with us. So if you're not involved in the Bible reading plan with us, the Word reading plan, reach out to me. I'll get you a link where you can download a copy, and you can jump in with us, and we'd love to have you doing this with us. And so today we're kind of jumping around a good bit between Psalms and 2 Samuel. And so we started out on Monday in Psalms 1 and Psalm 19. And Psalm 1 just talks about this contrast between the righteous and the wicked, and the blessings and the prosperity that come from being a person of God, and the problems that come with being a person who's not a person of God. And I think we know as Christians that prosperity and blessings don't necessarily mean money, right? But just the favor that we have with God, that He blesses the things that He's doing in our lives, and the things that He wants us to do for the kingdom, and those kinds of things when our hearts align with His. Then we jumped over to Psalm 19, and we also looked at just David's view of the law, which is really encouraging to read the way that the way that David views the law of the Lord, and he viewed righteousness, and he viewed just the Lord in general. I think it was a good setup in Psalm 1 and Psalm 19 to see why David was labeled a man after God's own heart. He was labeled a man after God's own heart because he had a high view of the Lord, a high view of Scripture, a high view of the law. And so whenever we read 2 Samuel 11 and 12, which we're about to look at, and David has a huge fall, the biggest fall of his life, the biggest fall from grace, the moral misstep, we're reminded why, even though he messed up, God still viewed him as a man after His own heart because of the view that he had of Scripture. We all fail. We all mess up. But it's the way that we look at God, the way that we look at His Word, and the way that we live our lives is how God views us. And so 2 Samuel 11 and 12, which we read on Tuesday, talk about the story of David and Bathsheba, right? Where David sees Bathsheba bathing on the roof. He calls her to his house. They have a relationship, an adulterous relationship. She gets pregnant, and David has to find a way to get out of this mess that he has created. And so he tries a few different things. He ultimately has the husband of Bathsheba, Uriah, killed. And so then we have in chapter 12 where Nathan, he rebukes David for this. David didn't think anybody knew about it, but Nathan knew because the Lord had told Nathan. And so Nathan goes and he rebukes David. And then we see that this child ends up dying. And the whole time the child is on its deathbed, David is crying out to the Lord. He's fasting, he's praying, he's weeping. He's a broken individual. But as soon as the child dies, he turns and he worships the Lord. And everybody's like, what's going on? We thought you were going to harm yourself if the child died. And David said, look, while the child was sick, I was praying because I didn't know what the will of the Lord was. And if the will of the Lord was that this child would live, I wanted to be praying for that. But now that the child has passed away, I can't bring him back. Can't bring him back from the dead. So I'm going to move on and I'm going to worship the Lord. Just an incredible response. And then we see Solomon being born after that. And then we went to Psalm 51:2. Psalm 51 and Psalm 2, I'm sorry. So Psalms 51, let's look over here, is where David is crying out to God to have mercy on him and to give him a clean heart, to search his heart and purify him. And then in Psalm 2, this is the psalm where basically David's just writing out that he's just, they're worshiping, they're celebrating the fact that the Lord is bringing to fruition the promises that were given to Abraham, that God's people would be blessed through Abraham. And we see that starting with David and the descendants of David as the kings and the leaders of Israel, and the blessings that God pours out on through them. But then ultimately the blessing that comes from Jesus, who is also in that line of descendants, and that God blesses blesses Israel, blesses us as descendants as well through Jesus, that descendant of David. 2 Samuel 24, we'll jump back over there. We talked about this a little bit yesterday if you saw the video. This is where God allows Satan to tempt David to take a census. It's a pride thing. It's kind of a let's check our numbers, let's see how big our army is, let's see how equipped we are to handle our enemies kind of thing. And David ends up being punished for this, and he chooses the punishment of pestilence in the land for 3 days, which kills a ton of people. But then through that, we end up having David building an altar, and they acquire this land that ends up being the Temple Mount. And so then we read Psalm 24. Let's jump over back to Psalms. And Psalm 24 is a beautiful psalm, talking about worship, talking about being able to worship. We see that passage. Who can ascend the hill of the Lord? Who can stand in His holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false, who does not swear deceitfully. We see these cries of worship to the King of Glory in Psalm 24. And then we look at Psalm 103, where David blesses the Lord, but then he just praises the Lord and thanks the Lord for the salvation that the Lord brings, and that God will cleanse us of unrighteousness, and that salvation is in the Lord. And Psalm 139 is where we ended today. And Psalm 139 is a psalm of David crying out to God to search his heart and to find the flaws, find the sins, find the things that are unclean about him, point them out, and to purify him as only God can, right? And so, this morning after reading, my prayer to the Lord was, hey, search my heart and point out the things in my life that need to change. There's always things that need to change. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. We've all got things that the Lord is working on us with. And so sometimes those things aren't evident. Sometimes we don't realize the sins that are in our life. And so He's asking God, search my heart, find the things that need to be fixed. And tomorrow we will read Psalm 148 through 150, which we won't talk about here. I want you to read it for yourself. But a lot of people view these last few Psalms of the book of Psalms as kind of the grand finale of the fireworks show of Psalms, right? They're the Psalms that just kind of go out with a bang. And so tomorrow morning, Psalm 148 through 150. We look forward to seeing you on Sunday morning. If you're worshiping with us in person at 8:15, 9:45, and 11:15 here at church, or you can join us online at those same times, YouTube at 8:15, Facebook Live at 9:45 and 11:15. We've got East Milton meeting in person at the gym on Bobby Brown Road. If you're over that way, 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, we'd love to have you worship with us there. But we look forward to seeing you. Be on the lookout next week. You should be receiving texts from your small group leaders, and you should be receiving an email from me letting you know our plans for in-home small groups starting the week of June 8th. We're really excited about that, and we look forward to getting back in person a little bit more. So we'll see you soon. Y'all have a good weekend.